Kenji Kazama, a high school student who tries hard to look like a tough delinquent, ends up getting dragged into the strangest school club after encountering a group of eccentric girls who practically force him to join. Amid chaotic games and ridiculous conflicts, he struggles to maintain his pride while slowly becoming tied to the unique personalities of the female members who constantly throw his life into disorder. Without realizing it, the constant arguments, playful teasing, and unexpected moments gradually change the way Kenji sees friendship, care, and the meaning of belonging together. One day, Roka was handing out flyers in front of the school. The papers scattered everywhere after she was accidentally bumped by passing students. The flyers were recruitment forms for the game development club. While Roka was picking them up, Kenji suddenly came over to help her. He advised her to be more careful. Roka was about to thank him when Kenji's friends, Yokoshima and Hiroshi, approached. The three of them walked down the school corridor, surprising several students along the way. They were known as the Kazama Gang, consisting of Yokoshima, nicknamed Littlefoot, Hiroshi, known as Long Mountain, and Kenji as the gang's leader. Kenji complained to nearby students for forgetting his name. Yokoshima pointed out that their group had never actually caused trouble. Even though they looked like delinquents, they had never done anything truly bad. He even suggested that they disband the Kazama Gang and join a school club instead, but Kenji felt it was already too late for them to suddenly start living as ordinary students. Meanwhile, the game development club had received a notice of disbandment because it had not met the minimum membership requirements. Inside the clubroom, Roka, Shidose, Sakura, and Minami gathered to discuss the situation threatening their club's existence. Sakura wondered why their club was in danger of being shut down. Shidose explained that although they were registered as a cultural club, they had never submitted any creative projects. All they had done so far was play games. Without actually creating a game, the game development club would not be recognized as an official club, and Shidose had only just realized that problem. Roka also added that the club lacked enough registered members, and that day was their final chance to recruit new ones. Later that afternoon, the Kazama Gang walked together while jokingly discussing their plans to conquer the world. Hiroshi suggested forming a golf bag club, but Kenji immediately dismissed the idea as boring. Yokoshima believed cultural clubs probably had manga or games, so he proposed persuading one of them to share their collection. Not long after, they noticed smoke coming from a classroom. Kenji rushed inside, intending to help anyone who might be in danger. Roka was surprised to see him and wondered why he had entered so suddenly. Kenji asked what everyone was doing. Roka claimed the flames were only part of a dramatic demonstration. Hiroshi handed Kenji a fire extinguisher, and Kenji quickly sprayed it toward the fire effect. Everyone cheered when the flames disappeared. Roka seemed confused about why Kenji had taken the situation so seriously. Kenji questioned why there had been fire effects inside the clubroom in the first place. Fireworks were scattered across the floor, making the scene look suspicious. Suddenly, Yokoshima was startled by Minami's prank involving a small electric gadget, while Hiroshi was splashed with water by Sakura. It turned out Minami and Sakura had staged the act to keep outsiders from interfering with their activities. Roka then attempted to make Kenji forget what he had seen by continuing the club's imaginative roleplay involving elemental powers. Kenji grew increasingly confused by the conversation. Roka explained that everyone possessed a special element within themselves, but Kenji reminded them that they were living in the real world. At that moment, Minami and Sakura held him in place as part of their exaggerated performance, which only made Kenji panic and misunderstand the situation. Roka asked Kenji to simply forget everything he had witnessed, yet Kenji remained puzzled rather than convinced. Roka collapsed dramatically, surprised that her performance had not affected him at all. Shortly afterward, Shidose stepped forward, proudly claiming to represent the earth element, and struck Kenji with what she called an earth punch. Kenji groaned in pain and insisted that elemental powers were not real. Shidose casually explained that she had just been building a sandcastle earlier, her hands were still covered in sand, and that was why she decided to name the move the earth punch. Kenji wanted to run away, but he suddenly remembered his two friends. Shidose felt confused because their attacks had failed to erase Kenji's memory. Roka then suggested that the four of them combine their elements into one. Fearing for his safety, Kenji immediately took off. The four girls continued chasing him, while Kenji kept running to avoid them, nearly bumping into people along the way. Kenji sprinted all the way to the bicycle parking area. He could not understand the game development club at all, and to him, none of its members seemed remotely normal. Suddenly, Roka appeared and startled him. Instead of attacking, she thanked him for putting out the fire earlier and promised that she would never set off fireworks inside the clubroom again. Kenji was baffled and questioned why anyone would light fireworks indoors in the first place. Roka explained that she and her friends had planned to create a cool illusion to attract new members. Kenji still could not believe her actions had nearly caused a fire. Roka also thanked him for picking up a pamphlet for her that morning. Only then did Kenji realize that Roka was the girl recruiting students earlier for that unusual club. He promised not to tell anyone about the incident as long as Roka stopped following him. Roka admitted that she had actually been trying to invite him to join her club. She introduced herself as the president of the game development club and said she wanted to recruit him, but Kenji firmly stated that he had absolutely no interest in a gaming club. Roka corrected him, emphasizing that hers was not a gaming club, but a game development club. Roka then placed her hands on Kenji's shoulders. Kenji quickly said that her fire element Moe attack would not work on him. Roka calmly explained that the fire element was only a distraction, and that her true element was darkness. Moments later, Kenji's vision went completely black, and he could no longer see anything around him. At the same time, Hiroshi and Yokoshima regained consciousness and began searching for Kenji. Meanwhile, Kenji found himself tied up with his head completely covered. He had been taken by the game development club. Roka presented him with two choices: obey her and join the club, or face a barrage of elemental attacks. Feeling pressured, Kenji reluctantly agreed to join the game development club. After Kenji announced his decision, the members introduced themselves properly. Roka was the club president, Shirose was a second-year student, and Sakura was a first-year student. Kenji immediately shouted, asking them to untie him. Shirose nudged his leg to get his attention and asked whether he had been listening to what they said, teasing him when he accidentally moved closer while struggling to free himself. Kenji continued struggling, demanding that they remove the covering from his head. Roka finally removed the hood and untied him. Kenji could not understand why they had gone that far. According to Roka, if he had not been restrained, he would never have listened to her explanation. Kenji thought her methods were terrifying. He also questioned why they relied on such strange elemental gimmicks. Shirose then asked Kenji to write his name on the club registration form. Kenji worried that if the form reached a teacher, he might end up in serious trouble, but he also felt he would be in trouble if he refused Roka and the others. With little choice, he filled out the registration form. Chidose was even surprised at how obediently he complied. After handing the completed form to Chidose, Kenji quickly tried to leave. He thought that if he reached the teacher's office first, he could retrieve the form and pretend he knew nothing about it. However, he was shocked to learn that Chidose had already given the form to a teacher who was currently inside the clubroom with him. Kenji was stunned to discover that Minami was actually a teacher. She explained that she served as the advisor for the game development club. Panicking, Kenji grabbed the form and ran away. Chidose and Roka immediately chased after him. Kenji realized that he had completely miscalculated the situation. Suddenly, Sakura appeared running beside him. It turned out she had been waiting earlier, preparing for the perfect moment. Kenji called her foolish, yet at the same time admitted that her timing was surprisingly clever. Sakura introduced herself properly as a first-year student with the water element and asked Kenji to hand over the registration form. However, she suddenly remembered that she had forgotten to bring water and briefly left to get some first. Kenji could not help but wonder whether elements were really that important to her. Not long after, Roka managed to catch up to Kenji, forcing him to stop walking. She spoke in an adorable, persuasive way, hoping he would hand over the registration form, but he remained unmoved. Roka nearly lost her balance, yet she managed to steady herself. Suddenly, Kenji's vision went completely dark, as if he had been swallowed by shadows. Kenji told Roka to stop taking her strange obsession so seriously and thought he needed to leave quickly before her other clubmates arrived. Roka calmly explained that Chidose would not be coming because she was at the sandbox training to strengthen herself. Kenji could not understand why elemental themes mattered so much to them. Realizing that Roka was the only opponent in front of him, he pulled away the black cloth that she considered her territory. Unfortunately, he stepped the wrong way and nearly fell, but Roka quickly grabbed his leg and stopped him. Kenji asked her to let go, yet Roka refused. To her, Kenji was the long-awaited candidate they had been searching for, so she would not release him, even if it meant risking herself falling as well. Kenji told her to stop acting overly cute, but Roka insisted that this was simply her true personality. After a while, she began to struggle because the position put pressure on her stomach. She worried that staying like that too long might affect her future, especially since she dreamed of having one son and one daughter someday. Feeling guilty, Kenji apologized and asked her to let go. But at that moment, Chidose and Sakura arrived and helped pull him up. The three of them successfully saved Kenji. Still surprised that he had made it out safely, Kenji finally handed the form to Roka, introduced himself properly, and officially declared that he would join the game development club. The next day, Kenji had no idea what awaited him. He realized he had joined the club purely because he got carried away by the moment. He told Hachi and Yokoshima about it, but unfortunately their memories of the incident seemed completely gone. Kenji concluded that it was probably better not to involve his friends any further. Not long afterward, Ataru ran toward him while shouting his name. Ataru looked extremely worried and was convinced that Kenji must have suffered some kind of internal injury. As it turned out, Ataru was the vice president of the student council, and the four of them had been friends since their days at Fuji grade school. Ataru could hardly believe that they had all turned into delinquents after entering high school. Ataru had come because he heard that Kenji joined the game development club. According to him, the club was dangerous, or more precisely, the true danger was Chidosei's authority. Kenji was shocked to learn that Chidosei was actually the student council president at Fuji High School. With her firm leadership and natural charisma, even teachers respected her authority. She was essentially the undisputed queen of the school. Her influence was so strong that even the major delinquent factions on campus feared her. Kenji had never realized that so many rival groups existed beyond his own circle. Ataru compared Kenji's group to just the tip of an iceberg. Apparently, Chidosei had long been Ataru's greatest rival. Unexpectedly, Chidosei overheard their conversation and immediately called them out. She happened to be inside the girls' locker room at the time and accused them of spying. Ataru quickly tried to explain that he had no such intention, leaving Kenji confused about why he sounded so apologetic. Kenji argued that spying was impossible since the locker room was located on the second floor, but Chidosei insisted that teamwork could make anything possible. The boys briefly imagined how such teamwork might work, unintentionally leaving Ataru out of their scenario. Feeling excluded, Ataru became annoyed, only for Chidosei to tease him further, saying that being overlooked was exactly why he had lost the student council president election to her. As vice president, Ataru knew that any mistake would give Chidosei the chance to completely outshine him, and strangely, he found that rivalry motivating. Chidosei, however, showed little interest in the exchange and simply told them to leave. Kenji jokingly asked whether she planned to use one of her earth element techniques, but Chidosei confidently claimed she could defeat them without any special effort at all. To everyone's surprise, Ataru suddenly prepared himself as if ready to accept any challenge she threw at them, shocking Kenji and the others. Kenji wondered why Ataru, who always told them to change their behavior, was now acting so recklessly. Seeing that words were ineffective, Chidosei prepared to push a storage rack from above. Kenji quickly moved out of the way, but Ataru remained standing still. He refused to run, believing that running would mean repeating all his past defeats. He also said that he was doing this to protect Kenji. Touched by his determination, Yokoshima and Hiroshi stepped forward to help Ataru face Chidosei. Meanwhile, Kenji felt strangely left behind. Ataru and Chidosei ended up struggling over control of the rack. Noticing Kenji hesitating, Ataru told him they could not do anything without him, and asked for his help so they could finally change. Yokoshima and Hiroshi admitted they could only hold the weight for about a minute. Hearing that, Kenji leaped forward and joined them, pushing the rack back together. With one final effort, Kenji kicked the rack back into the room. Kenji and Ataru felt relieved, believing they had finally defeated Chidosei. She acknowledged Kenji's ability, but in the end she still considered herself the winner, since their actions caused both Kenji and Ataru to be labeled as suspicious loiterers near the girls' locker room. As a result, the two of them were suspended from school. That afternoon, just before dismissal, Roka approached Kenji and informed him about the upcoming Game Development Club meeting schedule. Instead of responding enthusiastically, Kenji questioned why he even needed to attend. Roka then asked whether he truly had no interest in joining the club. Kenji felt bad refusing her, especially since he had already submitted his registration form. In the end, whether he liked it or not, Kenji accepted that he now had to take part in the Game Development Club's activities. Ataru and Kenji were being questioned by the vice principal in the student guidance office. Both of them tried to convince the vice principal that everything had been a misunderstanding. They insisted that it had only been a fight and that they would never do anything inappropriate. However, they could not deny the fact that they had entered the girls' changing room. At that moment, Roka peeked through the door and labeled them as shameless. Startled, Ataru and Kenji shouted at the same time. Suddenly, Kenji woke up and realized the entire situation had only been a dream. The suspension, however, was very real. Both he and Ataru were still officially suspended from high school. On the same day, a student named Takao visited Minami in the teacher's office to discuss the planned disbandment of the Game Development Club. Minami explained that the club would not be dissolved because it had successfully gained a new member. Meanwhile, the members of the Game Development Club gathered in their clubroom with Minami, feeling relieved that the club had been saved. Sakura mentioned that it was all thanks to Roka, who had managed to persuade Kenji to join. Sakura even forgot Kanji's name at one point, and Chitose jokingly referred to him using a teasing nickname related to his earlier misunderstanding. Roka then asked how long Kanji's suspension would last. Chitose guessed it would continue until next week, but Minami clarified that Kanji would be allowed to return as soon as the following day. Later that day, Kanji sat alone in a park, reflecting on his suspension after the incident involving the girls' changing room. He absent-mindedly petted a nearby cat, but the animal suddenly ran away in fear. When Kanji turned around, he saw 4 figures wearing cloaks standing behind him. Surprised, he asked who they were. The cloaked figures seemed unsure of how to respond at first, but soon they began chasing him. Kanji prepared himself to confront them, yet instead of attacking, the 4 figures joined hands and began circling him repeatedly. Their leader even became dizzy from spinning so much. Kanji grew confused, unable to understand what they were trying to accomplish. Feeling as if he was being mocked, he warned them to reveal their identities. 3 of them finally removed their disguises. They were Takao, Sakuragoka, and Tsutsumi. They explained that they were members of the original game development club, while Roka's group was actually a fake version of the club. Kanji was shocked by this revelation and began to understand why Roka and her friends had seemed somewhat suspicious to him. Tsutsumi urged Takao to quickly explain what Kanji needed to do. Takao then asked Kanji to immediately withdraw from the fake game development club. If he left, the club would lose enough members to be automatically disbanded. Kanji finally realized why Roka had been so determined to recruit him. He questioned Takao's request, and she explained that the fake club had been on the verge of dissolution until this sudden involvement complicated everything. Although Kanji had never truly intended to join the club, he wondered why he should follow Takao's demands. Kanji tried to walk away, but the group repeatedly blocked his path, which only irritated him further. Takao grew nervous, worried that Kanji might react aggressively, yet she admitted that she believed he would never hurt a girl. Kanji then looked at Sakuragoka and asked whether Sakuragoka was actually a girl. Sakuragoka confirmed that she was female, while Tsutsumi anxiously watched the situation unfold. Sakuragoka appeared to be a beautiful girl, though her appearance often caused confusion among others. Sensing Kanji's doubt, Sakuragoka removed her cloak to prove her identity. By coincidence, she was wearing the girl's school uniform at the time. Tsutsumi was shocked, since Sakuragoka had previously refused her suggestion to wear that uniform. She felt annoyed that Sakuragoka revealed that side of herself to Kanji instead of to her. After seeing the proof, Kanji finally accepted that Sakuragoka was a girl, and Sakuragoka immediately relaxed in relief. Kanji felt confused. He had not done anything yet, but the 3 of them already looked completely worn out. He wanted to leave as soon as possible, only to realize there was still one more person he had to face. The cloaked figure standing before him was tall and broad, and Kanji was certain the person beneath the cloak was a man. Tsutsumi worried about her friend, explaining that the tall figure was named Yamada. Even though Yamada looked intimidating, he was actually shy and soft-spoken. Yamada removed the cloak and claimed to be a woman, but Kanji reacted impulsively and struck him. Takao was shocked that Kanji had hurt a member of her club, and she felt responsible for standing up for her friends. Kanji suggested that Takao should simply drop the idea of fighting, and Tsutsumi surprisingly agreed with him. Takao admitted that she might lose in terms of strength, technique, and speed, but she believed she could still defeat Kanji through intelligence. Takao then considered using official authority to settle the matter, wondering whether people would believe her version of events or Kanji's honesty. Sakuragoka was convinced that between a supposed troublemaker and a competent club president, people would naturally trust Takao. Tsutsumi joked that if Kanji were more interested in chests instead of feet, Takao might even try to charm him. Takao did not understand what her friends were talking about, while Kanji was baffled by the rumor that he had a foot obsession. Apparently, they had heard it from Minami. Kanji could hardly believe that a teacher like Minami had described him that way. Blushing, Tsutsumi teasingly asked whether Kanji also liked thighs and ankles, continuing her playful remarks in a way that embarrassed him. Annoyed, Kanji firmly stated that he simply liked girls with confidence and presence. Tsutsumi continued teasing him, asking whether he planned to get too close to Takao. Takao immediately told Kanji to keep his distance. Not long after that, a police car arrived. Kanji assumed Takao had actually called the police, but she quickly denied it. The officers approached them and explained that they had received a report claiming civilians were attacked by a group dressed in black. The police suspected Yamada. With little choice, everyone admitted that a fight had occurred earlier and claimed the real troublemakers had already run away. They all insisted they were not involved. After hearing the statements, the police ended up taking Yamada into custody. Takao and the others believed the incident must have been caused by the fake game development club and became determined to settle things with them later. The next day, Chidose and her friends were acting out a dramatic scene, pretending that Chidose had defeated everyone. In the final moment, she launched an attack toward Roka, who acted as though she had run out of strength and was blown back by Chidose's overwhelming power. Roka noticed Kanji standing nearby and silently hoped he would defeat Chidose so she could finally rest. Kanji tried to close the door, but Roka stopped him. Kanji could not understand why they were performing such a ridiculous skit, especially since their acting was far from convincing. Chidose complained that Kanji had interrupted a very exciting scene. She explained that they were playing a hero game in which a hero attempted to stop the Demon King's special compression ritual. Kanji admitted he had no idea what she was talking about. Roka even invited him to play the role of Hero A, but Kanji loudly refused, saying he had no intention of joining a play that did not even have a script for him. Roka smiled and revealed that they had all been waiting for him. That day, she had gathered everyone to discuss their plans for the upcoming Fuzhou High School Cultural Festival. Kanji had not even realized their club would participate in the festival. He was about to ask something when Takao suddenly arrived and told them not to get arrogant just because they had gained a new member. Kanji was surprised to see Takao there, and Chidose was equally surprised that Kanji recognized her. Kanji explained that a lot had happened between him and Takao the previous day. Chidose teasingly asked whether Kanji had behaved inappropriately toward Takao, which he immediately denied. Takao criticized Roka and the others, saying their club spent more time relaxing and eating snacks than actually making games. She declared her intention to shut the club down. However, when Chidose asked how she planned to do that, Takao suddenly fell silent. Taking advantage of the moment, Chidose and Sakura playfully retaliated by tossing sand and splashing water at her. Kanji could only watch and wondered why Roka was not joining her friends. Instead, Roka questioned what kind of person Kanji thought she was. Roka moved as if to help Takao, but Takao refused her assistance and accused her of being a traitor. Chidose found it strange that Takao was still angry at someone as adorable as Roka. Frustrated, Takao ran outside while declaring that she would definitely disband the Fate Game Development Club. She quickly left the area, with Roka following right behind her. Kanji asked why there were 2 game development clubs at the school. Chidose explained that Takao held a grudge against Roka, because Roka had once pushed Takao's club to the brink of shutting down. Back when Roka was still a first-year student, she stood out as unusual, and people tended to avoid what they did not understand. As a result, many students kept their distance from her. Kanji initially assumed that Roka might have eventually snapped under the pressure and revealed a darker side of herself. However, the truth was different. It was actually Chidose who lost her temper toward the other members. Because of that incident, the club continued to shrink, and Roka chose to leave, feeling responsible for what had happened. Afterward, Sakura invited Roka to start a new game development club together with Chidose. Chidose had been Roka's childhood friend and closest companion, and she had her own way of helping Roka recover. That was why Chidose insisted that Kanji bring Roka back before things could turn worse. Kanji could not understand why he had to be the one to do it. Chidose even asked Sakura to pressure Kanji into agreeing if he refused. In the end, Kanji reluctantly went to find Roka. Sakura then realized that the situation had actually been Chidose's fault all along, yet she still wondered why Takao remained angry at Roka. Chidose nearly interrupted Takasaki before he could say anything further. Meanwhile, Kanji arrived just in time to see Roka and Takao arguing while pushing each other aside in frustration. He noticed that Roka was holding a towel. Takao questioned whether Roka intended to start trouble, but Roka quickly denied it. Kanji stepped in and gently placed the towel over Takao's hair, realizing that Roka had only wanted to give it to her. He began to suspect that Roka was simply trying to apologize. For Takao, however, an apology was not what she wanted at that moment. She called Roka selfish, saying that Roka had done nothing wrong yet chose to leave the club anyway. Rather than hearing an apology, Takao had actually wished for Roka to stay by her side in the game development club. Kanji found Takao's feelings difficult to fully understand. In the past, when many members left, Takao worked hard to recruit new ones. After finally gathering enough members again, she told Roka about it and invited her to join an upcoming competition. At that time, Roka revealed that she had already formed a new club with Chidose and had even become its president. That news deeply saddened Takao. She questioned why Roka did not simply abandon what she considered an unnecessary club. Roka explained that she could not disband it so easily because she and Chidose had built it together from the beginning. Kanji then asked what Takao planned to do next. Takao firmly declared a challenge. The 2 clubs would compete during the upcoming cultural festival. If Takao's club won, Roka and the members of the so-called fake game development club would merge into her club. Kanji suspected that Takao actually just wanted to be part of Roka's group. Roka then asked for Kanji's opinion, which confused him since he believed he had nothing to do with the matter. Roka reminded him that he was a club member, meaning his opinion mattered. Kanji admitted that he did not fully understand what Roka was aiming for, but he preferred simple solutions rather than complicated ones. Hearing that, Roka accepted Takao's challenge and confidently declared that her club would win. Takao then left, while Roka realized she might have committed to something bigger than she expected. Roka and Kenji returned to the clubroom and explained everything to Chidose. Sakura became excited upon hearing the news, while Chidose considered the situation troublesome. Roka pointed out that if they lost, their club would be absorbed into Takao's club. Hearing this, Minami worried that she might lose her usual resting spot if the clubs merged. That meant their only option was to win. Kanji assumed Roka must already have a solid strategy since she sounded so confident about defeating Takao's club. However, Roka revealed that her only idea was a game concept about a hero trying to stop a Demon King's spatial compression ritual, and she had no additional plans beyond that. After hearing this, Kanji became convinced that their chances of winning were not looking very good. Last year, the original game development club was on the verge of being disbanded. However, Takao worked tirelessly to rebuild it, and the club eventually rose again as a newly revived game development club. Even though its members were still inexperienced, their strong teamwork led to surprisingly good results during competitions. At that time, even students from other schools acknowledged their abilities. Because of that, Chidose became convinced that her own game development club could not defeat Takao's club through normal means, and she believed victory would depend on how much they could disrupt Takao's game production process. Kenji strongly disagreed with that idea. Sakura even suggested pouring water onto the computers in Takao's clubroom, while Chidose considered filling the opponent's CPU with dirt. Kenji could hardly believe the plans they were proposing. Minami also rejected those ideas, saying they were inefficient and time-consuming. She even claimed she had prepared a stun device to settle things quickly, which left Kanji stunned that a teacher could think that way. Roka spoke again in her usual cute manner, but Kanji had already grown tired of hearing it. Kanji wondered why they were not simply focusing on making a game, since they were supposed to be a game development club. To his surprise, none of them actually knew how to create a game. He then asked Roka about her skills and apologized for upsetting her earlier. Roka admitted that she could finish the game Super Marilyn in 1 hour. Kanji was speechless when he realized that Roka only knew how to play games, not create them. Super Marilyn was an action game developed in the 1980s. It was one of the early industry games to feature color visuals and offered unique charm and accessibility that made it popular among both children and adults. Hearing that explanation, Kanji felt it might be better for them to simply accept defeat and join Takao's club instead. However, Chidose insisted they first needed to find out what kind of game their rivals were making, and she asked Kanji to spy on them. Kanji immediately refused, saying he had no interest in doing something so underhanded. Even after Chidose pleaded with him, he still declined, so she proposed that whoever lost a round of Super Marilyn would become the spy. Unfortunately for Kenji, he lost the game and ended up assigned to the task. Kanji was confused when Roka decided to accompany him even though she had won. Roka casually asked why it would be a problem if she came along, and Kenji eventually decided not to argue. They arrived in front of Takao's clubroom. Kanji slowly opened the door while Roka crawled dramatically in front of him, making things more difficult. He told her to leave because she was only getting in the way, but they were suddenly discovered by Takasaki, whom Kanji initially mistook for Takao. Kenji quickly explained that they were only stopping by. Takao seemed surprised that they showed up so confidently after accepting her challenge, yet she invited them inside because she wanted to show them something. Kanji stepped in immediately, but Takao stopped Roka from entering. Inside the room, Kenji was shocked to see Yamada and immediately apologized for hitting him before. Yamada accepted the apology and admitted he had also been at fault. Tsutsumi was surprised to see Kanji there, but said she owed him thanks after he helped her witness Sakura Goka wearing women's clothing earlier. Not long after, Sakura Goka arrived, and Kenji was confused to see him wearing a male uniform. Sakura Goka panicked, worried that Kanji might react harshly after learning the truth, and quickly ran away. Suddenly, Tsutsumi's attitude became unusually friendly, even offering Kenji coffee despite the club not actually having any. Soon after, they began explaining to Kenji how game development worked. Meanwhile, Roka quietly stood near the door. Tsutsumi seemed confident that Kenji would eventually give in to Takao's persuasion, believing no one could stay calm when caught off guard by such close encouragement. However, Yamada pointed out that things would not be so simple. Kanji's messy hair made Takao hesitant, and as long as it stayed that way, she could not even reach his head comfortably. At that moment, Roka suddenly rushed forward and pushed Takao. Startled, Kanji turned around, and the unexpected movement caused an awkward collision that left everyone embarrassed. Takao's face turned bright red, and she reflexively scolded Kanji before quickly asking Roka to leave the room. Not long after, Takao apologized and admitted that the incident was not Kanji's fault. Takao then expressed her hope that Kanji would join her club. In her opinion, competing felt pointless when the outcome already seemed obvious. She also believed that if Kanji joined her team, Roka and the others would stop dragging him into strange situations. Although Takao's reasoning made sense, Kanji remembered Chidosei's words about wanting to help her friends in her own way, especially since she and Roka had worked hard to establish their club together. Kanji ultimately decided that settling things through a fair duel would be more interesting. Takao looked irritated and declared that her club would attract far more visitors than Roka's club. After leaving Takao's clubroom, Kanji realized he had acted far cooler than he actually felt, even though he still had no idea what he was going to do next. Outside, he noticed Roka sitting alone in deep thought. He approached her and invited her to return with him, reminding her that their duel was waiting. When Kanji arrived at the clubroom, he saw Chidosei and the others completely absorbed in playing a game. Roka explained that she had created the game together with Chidosei and had given it a dramatic science fiction title. The story took place during an era of space exploration, when humans interacted with aliens and interplanetary trade had become common. However, there was one type of publication that humans were not allowed to obtain because it carried an extremely high age restriction according to alien standards. Even so, humans remained curious about it. This situation led to the emergence of a secret delivery service that smuggled the restricted items across space, ignoring intergalactic customs and traditions. In the game, players took on the role of couriers tasked with delivering prohibited goods to their destinations while avoiding obstacles. The concept combined a science fiction setting with comedic parody elements. Roka confidently believed that her revolutionary idea would attract players from all over the world. Kanji, however, found it hard to believe that such a grand concept came from what was essentially just a board game. Despite that, Roka remained extremely proud of her creation. From Kanji's perspective, the game's story felt inappropriate for a school festival. Chidosei then asked whether Kanji and Roka had succeeded in causing trouble for Takao's club. Kanji was surprised to learn that this had been Chidosei's intention all along. According to her, their club would never win through honest competition alone, so she had considered using her authority if necessary. Kanji firmly opposed the idea. At that moment, Sakuragaoka rushed into the clubroom, slightly out of breath after changing into a girl's uniform, so Kanji would not grow suspicious of her identity. A few days later, the cultural festival at Fuju High School finally began. A middle-aged man who was an alumnus of the school arrived with his young son, casually describing the event as nothing more than an ordinary festival. Not long afterward, they both sensed an overwhelming energy in the air, causing the boy to question whether the festival was truly ordinary. The powerful atmosphere turned out to come from two game development clubs preparing to compete against each other during the event. The alumnus became convinced that something memorable would happen that year. The two game design clubs faced one another. Although Takao had originally expected Roka's club to sabotage her team's project, she felt relieved that they chose to compete honestly instead. In truth, Chidosei had once planned to interfere with Takao's work, but her friend stopped her before she could act, which surprised Takao greatly. That decision was also the reason Kanji chose to support the opposing side. Tsutsumi explained that whichever team attracted the most visitors would be declared the winner. If Takao's club won, Roka and her friends would have to join Takao's team. When asked what reward Chidosei wanted if her club won, Chidosei impulsively proposed an embarrassing but harmless penalty for Takao, leaving Tsutsumi astonished at how serious their wager had become. Takao herself was confused that such terms had been decided without consulting her. With everything settled, the duel officially began. Kanji believed the situation would only make things more troublesome for Takao, while Takao viewed Kanji as behaving in a shamelessly provocative way. During the festival, visitors lined up to try the games presented by the clubs. Many attendees were curious about Takao's demonstration style, which had gained unexpected attention beforehand. However, it turned out that Takao was not actually in charge of demonstrating the game that day. Soon after, Kanji stopped by to see her. Takao suspected that he had come to interfere, but Kanji was simply there to look around. Not long afterward, Tsutsumi approached Kanji wearing a maid outfit as part of the club's promotional effort, though Kanji felt the costume did not quite suit her. Surprisingly, Sakuragaoka also appeared in a maid uniform, and Kenji complimented her appearance, unaware that Tsutsumi had insisted she wear it. Tsutsumi was willing to try anything to attract more visitors, and even Yamada ended up wearing a maid costume. Takao then invited Kenji to look at the results of her club's hard work. The visitors seemed to genuinely enjoy the game they had created, and Kenji openly acknowledged its quality. Takao interpreted Kenji's reaction as an admission of defeat and believed he was finally willing to help make the club more enjoyable. Kenji admitted that Takao and her teammates had done an impressive job, but he encouraged her to also visit Roka's club and see what they had accomplished. Takao grew irritated by what she saw as Kenji's overly confident attitude. Unexpectedly, Roka's club built an enormous play castle, and a huge number of students lined up to try it. Kenji explained that the attraction was the game their club had created. They had turned an analog game into a large play castle experience, even though it used handmade props instead of digital technology. Takao argued that it should not be called a game, but Kenji stubbornly insisted it was one. Even if it was not made on a computer, the creators had stayed awake for days just to finish the decorations. As Roka often said, anything fun could be called a game. That was exactly why they built the play castle. Takao refused to believe such a massive structure could have been completed by one person alone. It turned out they had used Chidosei's authority to persuade members of the student council and several other students to help. Takao called that unfair, but Chidosei denied the accusation, claiming they were simply using the privileges available to club members. At one point, Chidosei accidentally stepped on Ataru's face during the commotion, and Ataru calmly accepted the situation without complaint. Chidosei then proudly declared that her club had won. Takao protested and demanded a rematch, but Chidosei reminded her that Takao herself had said the winner would be decided by the number of visitors. Takao argued that even though she allowed analog games, the attractions were not entirely original creations. Chidosei immediately pushed back, saying Takao's games were not completely self-made either. Both of them insisted they had built their games from scratch. Unable to argue further, Takao became overwhelmed and started to cry. Chidosei quietly apologized to Takao. In truth, she did not really care about winning or losing. What mattered to her was that Roka did not want to lose her club. Chidosei also apologized for destroying Takao's former club in the past, admitting that she had let her anger control her actions without thinking about the consequences. Kenji realized once again that Chidosei really was a troublesome troublemaker. Chidosei admitted everything had been her fault. Maybe Takao saw Roka's club as ridiculous, but Roka had finally found a place where she truly belonged. Chidosei hoped Takao would not take that place away from her. Takao then asked where Roka was. Chidosei led Takao and Kenji to one of the attractions inside the play castle. There, a middle-aged alumnus of Fuju High School was performing alongside his young son. They were acting out a dramatic father and son showdown as part of a role-playing game. Roka stopped the scene briefly to praise their performance. She was clearly thrilled and happily announced that 4 people had already participated in the theater-style game attraction. Seeing how much fun everyone was having, Takao admitted that the game was genuinely enjoyable. Watching Roka laugh and enjoy herself, Takao finally accepted her club's defeat. In her opinion, Roka's club was simply too unpredictable to deal with. Before Takao left, Roka explained that she could not join Takao's club because she was already the club president. However, she sincerely wanted to become friends with Takao and would gladly welcome her if Takao ever wanted to visit or collaborate with the club. Hearing that, Takao lightly tapped Roka on the head and smiled at her. After the festival ended, Sakura handed Kenji a bottle of water. She admitted she had not expected him to be such a kind person, considering his delinquent reputation. When the campfire event was about to begin, Kenji chose to sit alone on the rooftop instead. Roka came to find him and asked why he was not joining the campfire dance. Kenji said he was not particularly interested in the dancing, but he had truly enjoyed the festival itself. Roka thanked him for joining her club. Kenji assumed she was feeling emotional and teased her by asking her to remove her toy glasses so he could see her expression clearly. The next day at school, Tsutsumi told Takao that they ultimately failed to disband the so-called fake game development club. Takao replied that Roka seemed to be trying her best, so it was fine to let things continue for now. She even thought she might accept it someday if Roka decided to officially change the club's name. Not long after, Chidosei and Roka suddenly appeared in front of them, with Sakura standing just behind. Roka apologized for causing trouble earlier, but Chidosei immediately reminded Takao about the agreed punishment. Takao was confused since Chidosei had already apologized, but Chidosei insisted that rules were still rules and the consequence had to be carried out. Chidosei eagerly prepared to carry out the playful penalty, which made Takao panic. Frightened, Takao shouted as loudly as she could, begging them to cancel the punishment altogether.